So maybe this time we'll get both of them to work. All right, so what I'm going to talk about is a lot of the stuff
that you want
doing.
that feel
A lot of
uncomfortable to those weeds as
will transfer across state lines. You guys are in a little different situation in some areas than we are, but this is what I'm talking about. So, to give you a little bit of background, I started at UK in 2010, and one of the things I wanted to do was get tenure. I wanted to have a job
such as no.
so one of my mentors suggested, hey, you do a wheat tissue survey. So what we did, we went to small grain growers and asked them for money
Chemical
to look at some tissue work in wheat. And specifically what we were looking at were nutrients that didn't have Malic-3 calibration correlation data for wheat production. That was wheat, copper, manganese, sulfur, and zinc.
It's like a natural disaster to them tillers.
Really,
Tsunami, all the
and the reason for that was
promoting
Professor Lloyd Murdoch. He and his
no tillers pitfalls.
at the turn of the century, 10 years ago, and I like to tell them that because it makes them feel old. But they did it in 2000, this same tissue survey, and all they found were one low zinc sample, several low copper, and
causes new flushes. Every time you go into that till
samples.
that soil
They did a lot of follow
happens.
search field
Flush
response
up.
files, and they never could get a response to boron. They didn't look at the copper. As far as we knew at the time, there had never been a documented copper response east of the Mississippi River on a mineral soil, so that was probably not a big deal.
And then also cultivation following cropping.
So what we did, we got the grant and sent out an email to the extension agent listserv and identify fields for us that we could either come out there and sample, or they would sample for us and take the results. So what they would do is typically I've identified a farmer. The wheat will be heading or be where you need it to be in the next week to 10 days. Let me get you there. So what the agents did in addition to that was gather the fertility parts at each
Integrated weed management program.
I asked them, I want your whole fertility, MPK, micronutrients,
We're trying to replace tillage.
anything that you're doing.
There's a need for tillage. So we want to
When we have these tissue samples, maybe we'll see some sort of relationship. So we went to large fields. Some fields were only 15 or 20 acres. Some fields were over 100 acres. And then we marked off about 100 by 100 area within the field and intensively sampled it. It wasn't much different size of this room. I mean, it was a pretty small area within that field, and pulled 100 flag leaf samples and collected soil samples from that field. And our sample depth for no-till, our recommendations are 0 to 4 inches, and if we're tilling, 0 to 6 inches. So whatever
weeds if you
practice they're using, that's the depth they collected the sample from. And then the other thing we did, took my little fine I dropped a pin so I could come back
situation is, especially if
and do some follow-up work if we saw something going on. Please don't get hung up on this table. All I want you to see is colors. I know in table 101 they say don't do this. But in the more advanced courses, they say if you're trying to show a point, you can do that. You can do it. So what I have here, this first column, 29 fields. Don't want you to read that. Don't have to. This
what's really challenged is small seed.
phosphorus, potassium, magnesium,
They don't like no-till situation. Carrots, they don't like
copper. That's the tissue nutrient status of these flag leaf samples, these 29. What I do want you to see are colors. Can everyone see yellow and red?
have to adopt.
If you can see that, this table has done its job. So, if the table is showing yellow, that means it fell below the reported sufficiency range for that nutrient. So we had several for nitrogen that were below the reported sufficiency range. Potassium, a bunch, a few for magnesium, a few for zinc, and a few for copper. If they were red, they were above the sufficiency range. So we had a few that were high for calcium, 2, 3 that were high for boron, that were high for manganese. So I took this data and compared it to my soil test data and found out real quick there's a good relationship with these. If I had some that were low, our recommendation for wheat, if we're at 300 pounds of soil test K per acre, 150 parts per million, or above, our recommendation for potash is 0. So we had several of these that were low with 500 pounds of soil test K.
There's a reduced
Makes sense. Nitrogen.
those yields. You don't get that yield drag. The yield on strip till is similar, sometimes better than
Any yellow.
beans, cucumber,
Compare that with
winter squash, broccoli, sweet corn,
wet spring. Some of them I was actually walking
small seeded vegetables, well under strip till.
because it was at the right time. They actually blew a couple levees to keep from flooding downstream towns. I mean, we had a spring. So these are
Back to these farmers. Now we're telling these farmers, I want you to adopt
down this area.
now.
Evansville, Indiana, to Henderson, Kentucky, Paducah, and Princeton, Kentucky.
Well, in the spring, it's going to
They might not have been in the county I was sampling, but I was never more than 30 to 50
months.
away from a reporting station. So I got a decent idea. And looking at the green for the months of January, February, March, and April,
still because it's going
0.7 inches above normal. Paducah was almost 13, 0.93 inches above.
soil. It's probably
So
talking of that soil. Where are they going to plant that?
samples are probably a little bit,
We can
because it's a goofy spring. We had a lot of rainfall, and tissue samples are pretty sensitive. If you take it in the morning versus in the evening, if it's stress versus not stress, it's going to make a difference. So that's what we did. So I went to the wheat board, or the small grain growers, and showed them this data. Said not really concerned with MP or NK or magnesium. They're a little bit low. No relationship looking at soil test values versus tissue values, and that's probably because we had all this rainfall.
with that tillage.
Any good young guy starting out, I said, we probably
No matter what tillage you use,
more
you still
concerned
about
him.
integrated weed management program.
All because Murdoch,
Because again,
you know, 18, he had 18 samples that were low. Well, he probably had 15 different site years of data that showed no response, so I felt pretty good about it.
management for
Remember
I said weed.
where it was low, where it was high, we had real low pH. So that makes sense. And then calcium,
Some of
but I've never heard of
the stuff is common.
calcium. Big deal.
Actually,
Told them further observations were warranted, and then I made this comment in red. I said, sulfur. You know, a third of the people that I sampled were applying sulfur to wheat. I said, can you guys help me understand that? Well, that was the wrong thing to say.
control.
A third of those people on the small grain board were applying sulfur
Well, there's
wheat, and they kind of let me have it. They said, buddy, we can't grow wheat without adding sulfur. I said, really? I've not been aware of a lot of sulfur deficiencies. I said, I'm looking for
crop selection.
can I do some research on your farm? No. I said, well, do you have, checks in there? Do you have treated checks where you can compare a sulfur application to no application?
And I did
No, I have to put sulfur down.
nice little leaf span,
Okay.
shade out weed.
Well, I was trying to get more money to do it again because I thought 12 inch
For field crops, we
above average rainfall probably influenced the results. And
fill it.
I really
Soybeans you plant at 7-inch,
sulfur.
that canopy closes much faster so it competes.
Embarrassed and hurt and mad and everything else. I said, I want to do this again.
Minces you
But I-
plant some can. You
up on my sulfur fertility. I didn't think
tighten up that rotation, that
so. I started
up faster,
the sulfur.
better.
Sulfur cycle, it's similar in a way to the nitrogen cycle. We have some deposition.
Happens
Have it coming in as animal manures and biosolids, plant residues,
sometimes you can play
fertilizers, and this in the past used to be
rate
the impurities in your macronutrient fertilizers, sulfuric acid.
crops. We have cool season crops.
They weren't cleaning it up that well. You got some free sulfur
They might,
with your DAP, or
so in those conditions,
they're getting less of that now.
put in, control the weeds a little bit before you put that crop in, allow that soil to warm up, and then it'll do
Plant can take it up. We can lose it by leaching. The way I like to lose sulfur is remove it in grain.
about as
To lose it,
and as healthy as possible. You have to
take it
crop.
is a bushel of grain. So here's the sulfur.
But what happens?
What else about sulfur? Well, it is essential. It's
Infestation.
It is essential for crop growth. Present in proteins, amino acids, and used for chlorophyll synthesis. We used to get a lot of free sulfur from the smokestacks. Well, we're cleaning up our
Crop is getting,
a lot better. We have better. We're getting
not only that, you have some weeds that don't going to
coming out of the back end of the diesel truck.
take them
We're burning.
dormancy.
You know, that low sulfur minus or 15 ppm or 25 ppm sulfur, whatever, we're burning cleaner fuel. A lot of our coal fire plants have converted to natural gas. So we're burning cleaner energy sources too. We also have that coupled with higher yielding crops. We're removing more sulfur, we're taking more of it off, we're putting less of it back into the ground. Another issue, it's somewhat mobile in the soils. It's a anion surface of most of our soils, anyway, pretty much in the U.S., have cation exchange capacity. They hold
Later in the season,
a negative charge holding a positive. A negative charge does not hold a negative charge, so that can leak,
have to take
like nitrate. Not as much, but it can. And then we would expect deficiencies in winter.
crop real quick. It's the corn
Crops low in soil organic matter contains,
insect with
then crops with high removal rates. So what we were thinking about was wheat, alfalfa, corn, something like that.
a little bit
Very few. I was not
more about not just saying
at this point when I left that soy or that corn, small grain growers.
I said that definition
Heard
of the features.
Yeah, we thought it.
You want to keep throwing things.
I still haven't seen it yet. So I mean, I felt pretty good about that. To date, we have very few documented soil or sulfur responses. However, many of the private labs will give
You know you have
recommendation based on that 0 to 4 or 0 to 6 inch soil sample.
such as onions and garlics. You have
No, I don't blame them. But what does that 4-inch soil sample mean when you have a mobile nutrient? If you're sampling nitrate to 4 inches, what does that mean? We make a recommendation of 12 inches in Kentucky. Some people recommend down to 24 inches. I think out west they might go to 36 inches because it's a mobile nutrient. So
all those into the
sampling, that says centimeters, but that
You want-
say inches. So is that 4 or 6 inch sample good? And how much historical deposition do we have jammed up or tied up in the subsoil?
that the crops are being.
We have going on here. Malic 3 is not the best,
Do you want to
but it's the one we have. That's the same extract you guys use here. It's what we use in Kentucky. That's what the labs are going to
feel because it's clean?
keep. It's easy
Certain years you want to go in and put a
to change for one nutrient, especially in Kentucky, where we
also pollinate weeds and specific
of crops to even have an issue.
certain crops.
So, just said it, but we do have widespread sulfur deficiencies present
The reason is
due to all these facts. We have a fair amount of organic matter. It was asked earlier in the last
other things
What's our ranges? I threw out a number, probably 1.8 to 2.2, 2.0%
So if you
organic matter on the surface 4 inches. So that's not too far off. Still have his
you can get that weed under control.
atmospheric deposition. It's not as much as we used to.
So you
Still getting it, 10 to 15 pounds per acre.
have crops that are
Typical sample depth. So this was a field I sampled at 0 to 4 inches at 29 pounds per acre, Malic 3 sulfur. Then I took a 0 to 12 inch sample, 27 pounds per acre. Then I stuck a power probe in the ground to 2 feet. And guess what? I had 106 pounds of Malic 3 sulfur. So that confirmed what we were thinking. It might not be represented in that shallow sample that we're looking at pK and pH, but 2 feet,
now don't
roots are still able to access or access
this is just a consideration this rule.
for rates
Can seem good.
per ton alfalfa. The corn,
Make sure that
bushel corn crop is going to remove 16 pounds
and peas
sulfur.
is a good comparison.
Beans, 50 bushels going to remove about,
They're not
and then wheat,
squashes or
100 bushel
crop, so it's different than
9 pounds.
and it's a poor competitor. It's a warm season crop. Then I
Wheat or corn, wheat, double crop.
squashing that
So 3 crops in 2 years. You add that up,
growing cabbage, a leaf,
removal
cool season
in 2 years, and we're only getting 10 to 15 from atmospheric deposition.
with sweet.
So I understand the concern.
It's a monocot different.
So fast forward, that was just the day that I left the soybean or the wheat board. So I found out that we got funding in,
Now the one thing that's missing,
took a different approach. Put in the email, made some phone calls, we'll do the tissue survey.
but you should throw that in there.
Want to
Agronomic crop.
sulfur deficient field. These look hard. So Union County, that's on the river, very productive county.
Growing wheat.
Productive county in the state due to the greatest percentage of Memphis silt loam. It's alpha soil, 5 foot deep without any restrictive layer, well drained.
Organic is just a little bit the tricky thing with
The agent there said that's
resin. How quick do I need to make that?
sulfur deficient. I know it. And we get from there talking to the farmer, and Randy said, well, I just got this farm 3 or 4 years ago.
Something
Before I bought it, 5 or 10 years before I bought it,
into
they have oil production on it. I also pushed out some fence rows. They burned the piles
you take your machine.
and then buried them. So I have a picture I'll show in a second, but I sampled these deficient areas and then went 15 or 20 feet outside and sampled the areas that didn't show a deficiency. Had an odd fertility status. So what happens when you burn?
As people feel like
Up or down?
not a single weed, and then all
Oh, come on. Okay, so we're not going to be
there went
there
into that.
today. So
You want
pH of 8, that's what happens when you burn ashes
what?
or apply wood ashes. pH goes up.
Basically, you already got everything you need out your.
pH of 8. 20 feet away, it was 6.6. Phosphorus, where we had sulfur deficiency,
There. That's
pounds per acre. 20,
Palmer amaranth.
64 pounds.
Potassium.
65 right there in that deficiency spot, 266 when I got out. And then sulfur ranged between 7 and 19 pounds per
Some
acre. I found some crops that they'd actually burned that dozer pile
they do. They
indicated by that high pH, and then they buried it.
the other thing is weeds
Expect the soil
pathogens just like living organisms.
surface 3 pounds per acre in normal top 6 or so inches of soil.
If they don't get moisture at the right,
120 acre field, you can see
there's not information out there about that, but there is some research where
mostly on the side.
we have
And then here's a close-up.
to make
I was pretty excited because this was the first time with my own two eyes that I'd actually seen sulfur deficiency in real life. It's like, wow, that's what it looks like. So I took a bunch of pictures, and here's where I sampled versus here's where I sampled, real close to each other. So started taking all my data, either with the Union County data or without. Was there something going on
there's
there?
ways you can use those chemicals. You don't always have to go out and
For
the whole.
bottom end of the sufficiency range is 0.15, 0.15%. If you're above that, you're in trouble. If you're below that, you might have trouble. Our soil test sulfur on the x-axis in pounds per acre. If you look at it, it's pretty sloppy data, but if you fit some sort of a line to it, it appears
It's tricky.
your soil test sulfur increases, so does your tissue sulfur. That's with the Union County data. I drop that out,
What happens if you
even less of a relationship.
so
I have some of my
places?
tissue sulfur, there's 0.37 with 15 pounds of soil test sulfur. And then, that's 15, let's double it to about 33, I have about 25. So there's no relationship there. You can't say, oh, if you're above 30 pounds, you're in good shape, or if you're below 15 pounds, you're not.
This
Looking at soil organic matter,
study
stored, and sulfur is a component of organic matter, so it generalizes, hey, this is where we're getting our sulfur. I looked at it the same way, with the Union County data, without. So with the Union County data, is soil organic matter increased? If you believe this line, don't really believe it because that's not a good relationship, but let's just say, for example, we do believe that. The higher the organic matter, the lower your tissue sulfur tends to be. Well, that's not a good relationship. If we drop the Union County data and just go to the sites that were sufficient, it's even more of a decline. Okay, I have 3.5% organic matter, but only about 25% or 0.25%, and then
there was a no-till treatment, and then there was a strip-till treatment.
I have more. So there's no relationship there. I wanted to be able to tell my producers, hey, if you're at this value, chances are good you're not going to see a response, or if you're at this value, you're going to see a response. Can't do that with this data.
Cover crop mixture
Back to the small grain forestry,
as well as
and, you know, what I found. I expected it to first be seen in wheat. Low
mixture.
grades, cool crop. Kind of wrote this Union County side off as an anomaly. I showed you the data, it was goofy, and it was just in small spots. So my conclusion was sulfur does not currently
Get rid of
limiting wheat, and that was 70 fields. That wasn't a huge amount, but I thought I did my due diligence. I thought I gave them their money's worth.
one result.
Fast forward later, I got a call from our extension forage specialist, Ray.
And the only thing we need
Edwin, I got a call from one of the county agents asking about sulfur and alfalfa. He said, will you hand it to you? I said, sure. So, gave him the same old spiel.
I should
Expect to see it first on sandy,
the eggplant. One additional step in the strip-till versus
a winter crop, and then this underlying thing, something with high removal rates.
we're there, and we separated the weeds. We wanted to say how
And
this treatment has gone
really unusual to expect from alfalfa
between the crops.
over a season. Now we're at 25 pounds of removal per year. Like, hey, maybe we're letting those on crop. So there was enough interest in doing a tissue sample of alfalfa. So kind of the same approach. Emailed the agent, said, can you
And we did
samples? Tissue samples, we followed
Had
the recommendation, AGR 92, top 6 inches at 10% bloom, sample 0 to 4 inches because that's what our recommendation is, And if you can get a probe into 12 inches, please collect that as well.
We know
Weren't set up to analyze
Rad-
for UK's regulatory services, so I sent it off to a private lab. I had 25 samples in 13 from 8 counties, and in 2014 I had 16 samples.
evidence of the force.
Necessarily the same 8 counties, so I had 41 samples. Again, don't get caught up with the numbers or whatever, but here's my 25 samples.
And then here is when we start separating the tree.
Okay.
Now, below here again, you basically plow on disc, you remove all that cover crop residue. Black plastic, same thing, plow on disc, remove all the cover crop, you lay the black plastic plant in.
Were low. Like, oh man, I've been looking at
You do
crop.
most cover crop.
So, did the same type of plots, trying to figure out
And in the script till plot,
a critical level,
you till
critical
here,
sufficiency range,
and then this is range undisturbed.
and for
Talk
you can see there's my 6 that fell below that.
about this weed biomass is from that.
Relationship. If you drop this point right here,
The eggplant was planted on 24th, and it was 24th of July when we removed that weeds. So this is in round
school test sulfur.
hard to envision, but the basically just.
The mean soil test
So if we look here, see,
pounds per acre.
I had
This is the second year at the
this in background. Basically, there was a
32 pounds per acre with the mean, and then not a good relationship here. I had 60 pounds of soil test sulfur, and it was just barely over the sufficiency range. And then you could cut that in half, and it was quite a. You can't really make a relationship. Did you give me the 10 minutes? Oh, okay.
It was
Okay. So now looking at the 0 to 12 inch depth, remember I said it was mobile. Maybe we're not sampling deep enough. Not really a good relationship.
full representation of all the weeds in there.
So what about organic matter? And this is across all the depths. So our mean was 2.3 in the top 4 inches, or if you went 0 to 12, 1.8% organic matter.
The weeds are basically in that little hill.
Doesn't really have a nice relationship here either. So I
They
can
didn't.
go in there comfortably say, well, if you're over 1.5% organic matter, you might need to add sulfur, because I was down below here and had some of the high
in the asset.
soil test or tissue
Most of those
concentration.
that till
Looking at it
was holding this on.
next year, same relationship.
How much time did it take
Relationship. So it's not pull this number out to cut off. So I showed you 6 of those sites.
2010 again? I'll issue the background, black plastic, no tills.
For 6 sites that I can do some.
For 2012, let's just skip to that.
I'm going to make myself a name.
That
And
background black.
agents, the first one
That was the
Tom Miller, Dollar County. And I said, when you contact that producer you sampled the alfalfa from, I'd like to do response trials. He said, yeah, I can call it, but it's not going to do you any good. He applies sulfur every year. So I'm like, well, shoot.
and this is an hour.
For every year, and it's still low tissue sulfur. Well, that would be a good place to work. But the other locations, they had not been applying sulfur, and they said, sure, we'd like to have you out there.
Happened.
So I set up small plots. They were 10 feet wide, 20
And we
randomized and replicated within the field. We didn't get out there before the first harvest, so right after he harvested,
2013. I said I was going
stuck flags in the ground. We spread
to go back to
25 or 50
show you that there's no
sulfur
well
as gypsum,
for 2014.
sulfate. And then we came back for the second and third tissue
We look at this.
and collected tissue and biomass samples. Here's my response data from
Drip tip. So the thing is, what happened
the first time I saw this, I thought I goofed up. I
in
thought
2010 and then 2014?
data in there 3 times. But you
So one of the things I want
see that with that first or that second cutting, my first harvest. This is 0 pounds of sulfur per acre, 25, 50. nothing going on.
So
And this is average
pair
5 site.
2013, 24.
Saw a little bitty bump with the second cut, not much, and then it went back down.
That's
The interesting thing, and I don't have this data in here, was we did see an increase in sulfur tissue
so
content,
that wasn't a control.
25 pounds,
Look at the percentage of that cover crop.
and it was no different than the 25. So we got a little bump in tissue concentration with
In those grass crops.
20, no yield increase. So another thing that we saw were small areas in wheat. And I want to, I've got a couple of
That's
minutes.
been a contributor factor. And also looked at the seed and
Got crossways with our
For the-
agriculture
you have
about sulfur. Because I got caught
surface of
a report
the long
from Louisville and
we
Sue
see
Green
8% difference.
phone. So
So
what do you think
what sort of triggered this difference?
that we don't have a big deal right now? I don't think we need to add it. Okay, I hung up the phone, and next thing I know, well, they'd also called him.
First told
He made the statement, well, you know, I don't care what the university says. I get my information from real people. I get it from fertilizer dealers and farmers. You know, they believe land-grant university research. They get it from, you know,
what
that actually on the ground. And like, oh, crap. My dean
so you
at this point
put that bias
thinking, So I just backed.
if you have
But he,
less.
another blurb trying to get
Then was this. When you reduce the seed rate, what happens? You put less seed on that soil surface, so there's more nip.
and actually they were
So I think this
we add sulfur based on our soil test. The
Contribute.
thing was, we didn't test for sulfur, and we don't have a recommendation for sulfur. So it's really good as an extension guy to get crossways with the Commissioner of Ag. He's no longer our Commissioner of Ag, though. So anyway, that's where all this research came up. I was trying to get my dean all the information I could so he can keep me from losing my job, whatever's going to happen. We saw a small area.
at the beginning, one of the common no-till vegetables is that the farm is always reduced, especially if you grow a warm season crop, and that's
Murdoch, he said,
of no surprise.
come out there and look. And I went out there with them, and sure enough, it looked like sulfur deficiency. So that's the second time in Kentucky I'd seen it. It was little 5x5 plots that he put out, spread calcium sulfate, gypsum, came back a week later, they went from yellow to green. They responded. Before he did that, he took tissue samples and soil samples and sent them off. Tissue samples showed it was a little bit low. Soil samples showed the same amount of soil test sulfur, but a different pH, just 10 feet away.
And it
Responded, the pH was 5 point.
overall,
It didn't, 5 point.
below the mark.
What's going on in that range? 5.2, you start getting aluminum and manganese toxicity. They start dinging up the roots. These roots are not able to function as well, not able to take up sulfur as well. So technically it did respond to that added sulfur, but if the pH would have been 5.6 or better, that probably wouldn't have responded because this one didn't. So that wasn't really a sulfur deficiency in my mind. That was poor pH management.
Since that
A couple other fields that I was aware of.
key for
Logan County had some, well, it's actually one producer,
best
had it in wheat and corn. He said, I think I've got sulfur deficiency. One of them actually needs nitrogen for his corn. He added sulfur, yellow. It was
surface.
nitrogen. But the other one, he did get a yield response to gypsum.
You start getting weeds pop up.
That it was coming out. And just to show you, I live in
Cropping system.
an area that's Caldwell County,
Because remember we followed up with 2 poorly competitive crops.
miles away. I wasn't just looking in my county. There's 100,
Plant the system maybe
I was in about 40. So I felt like I did my due diligence. And I reported that to Dean as well, so he can keep me out of trouble. So my conclusion to him was, I don't think sulfur is limiting at this point. We do expect to see sulfur work best first on coarse textured soils, low in organic matter, cool season crops, and high removal. Don't know what to say about the sample depth. 4 inches probably isn't sufficient. 12 might not be. I know there's not going to be too many producers pulling a 2-foot sample. Don't know what to tell you to do there. So I was trying to figure out how to make sulfur recommendations. I needed to find a sulfur responsive field. Even though the Malic 3 extractant is not the best, that's what we have, that's what I work with. Told them I'll continue to monitor sulfur in Kentucky. Fast forward to a year ago, a company guy come up to us and say, we're selling ammonium thiosulfate, ATS. Would you like to work for us? So, sure. And I said, I shared about throwing it with him. I didn't have it, but I just verbally reported. I said, look, I'll take it. I'll do the research, but I want you to know. I think we in chemical separation ammonium thiosulfate. He said, okay, that's fair enough. So the objective of this study was to compare the effectiveness of ATS to other in-source crop for wheat production in Kentucky. The other common in-source was UAN or treated UAN, treated with DCD and MBPT. Another thing, this ATS, if you look at measurements, it's reported to be a weak urease and nitrification inhibitor. So that's how we compared. We compared just fertilize that seed bed. So what UAN to UAN with ATS in it, or UAN treated with Agritane plus. Our sulfur rate was 10 pounds per acre, which should be sufficient for wheat production, and we adjusted to the same nitrogen rate with UAN. We're putting the same amount of nitrogen down. We had randomized complete block, and that's we did it the proper way. It wasn't supposed to build and have spray. That is only 10 sites. So 3 of them were well drained, and 1 of them was applied maybe by well drained soils, representative of what a lot of our wheat's grown on. There's a fair amount on the moderately well drained soils. 2 of these fields were on producers that had interest in sulfur fertility, and then 2 of them were at the experiment station. I told them I'd do 3 sites. I had enough product left over. I gave them 1 site for free. So we did that. Before you get that second week, before we put a canopy, it's going to be when we collected soil samples. Those weeks 4 and 0 to 12 inches, analyzed for total sulfur, total nitrogen, soil organic matter. Collected, and then if you were after we applied the sulfur at early flowering, 8.5, and then we ended up collecting grain yield. The other thing I can show it here. The Christian and the Logan, those are the 2 on site. This is in the heart of the wheat belt there in Kentucky, or wheat producing area. Wheat belt might be a little strong, but these were large plots. We're looking at 60-foot wide plots, 300 to 400 foot long. So why would their equipment to harvest? This Kevel was a small plot. It was a 10. Eventually it breaks down. And sometimes it was a 40-foot wide plot by 200 foot long. So 3 of these 4 were pretty popping up this, and then this was small plot research. The Pembroke and the Crider are essentially the same soil, well drained. You can basically keep those soils, have just real good drainage, real good soils. These are probably the cover crop soils we have in the state. So I had 2 nitrogen rates, 1 at green, Feeks 2, Feeks 3, 1 second application, about Feeks 5 or Feeks 6. That follows our recommendation. It eventually grew for nitrogen fertility in wheat. Our sulfur rate with the ATS treatment, thing is no, we wanted to get it all down with the first application. That worked out for 3 of the 4 sites. This year, this guy said, Don, it works very. Are you ready? So I just put down my nitrogen 2 days ago. So I missed that. I said, okay, well, we'll put it down with the second application. And we did. We got this. With that 10 pounds of.
To break down really,
Well, our Christian County
it basically keeps the root attached. It's just
all about the time it was heading. He said, Edwin, we got a problem.
into the
The
seed.
guy that runs my spray coop or my sprayer, and he said he saw your flags and stayed out of that place. He was supposed to put the second shot for us. So at that point, and we just went with this 40. We thought, hey, we're getting too late in the game to make an application. Here's our nutrient and organic matter stats for those 4 locations, 0 to 4, 0 to 12. So at the Christian County location.
And that's all I have. Are there any questions?
We had lower amounts of sulfur in the 0 to 4, higher amounts at the 0 to 12, indicating we had more at depth. The Logan and the Kevel, it was opposite. There was more sulfur in the top 4 inches than in the 0 to 12. Total nitrogen and soil organic matter follow the same trend. There's more in the surface, 0.2 or 2, 2.3, 2.2, 2.1, and then we're looking at 1.3 to 1.5 in the lower depths.
Nope.
So our tissue sulfur concentrations, we had 4 locations. Within those locations, there were no difference for any of the sites.
Everyone is
Differences in tissue sites, or between some of them, but within each of the sites, they weren't, they were the same. Same thing holds true for tissue nitrogen. The nitrogen sulfur ratio, same thing. So here's the $9,000 question, what did it do for yield? Remember, this only got 4 pounds of nitrogen up front. We saw a 5 bushel increase, I use that. It wasn't a statistical increase, but we saw something indicated, hey, there might be something here. 4 bushels with the UAN plus the inhibitor. I was like, oh, that's okay. Logan County, 103 bushel, 104, 107. No statistical increase with ATS or the inhibitors. The Kevel track, 101 with just straight UAN. The ATS, 100. The inhibitor, 99. Nothing going on there. So UAN had 70, 68, 74. Nothing really going on there. So I reported that back to them. Just to simplify that table real quick, over all the sites, here's the take-home message. UAN alone, 90.5 bushels per acre. UAN treated with ATS, bushel more, 91.6. UAM plus the Agritain or the DCD MBPT, 93. Nothing statistically different. Tissue sulfur content was the same across all 3 of those treatments. So wrapping that up, wheat yield, tissue sulfur in the ratio, nothing varied within a site, but they did vary between sites. There is no additional benefit than the sulfur or the inhibitors over straight UAM for this study. All 3 are acceptable, but pencil it out. Wheat margins are pretty tight in our part of the world this year. There's probably half as much wheat grown this year as was last year. So pencil it out before you start adding a lot of money to your fertility program and keeping an eye on it. So we're still concerned. We're putting down less sulfur, higher yielding plants, it's mobile. Do see some deficiency symptoms early on, just like you do in corn when it's cool and wet. You see purple corn. It might have plenty of phosphorus, but you'll see transient deficiencies. We still see that occasionally. It's in the organic matter. How do we recommend sulfur sampling? And we still don't really have any sulfur response documented. So wrapping up this whole talk, I'm still looking for sites. So if any of you guys farm in Kentucky that have a sulfur deficient soil, let me know. Trying to still determine how do I tell the producers you add sulfur, you don't add sulfur. We still expect to see it. My broken record, coarse textured soil, low organic matter, cool seasons, high removal. Don't know what sample depth, and I'm going to continue to monitor. So there is a pretty field of wheat with no sulfur deficiency. I think I have 3 or 4 minutes to answer questions if you have any. If not, I'll let you go get in line for lunch. Questions, comments?
Let's thank our speaker.
Yay.